The sound of glass shattering against stone doesn't belong in a peaceful Sunday afternoon. Yet there it is, my dinner slipping from a paper bag, the jar exploding into a red bloom across the pristine white tile of my brand new kitchen floor. For a frozen heartbeat, it looks like a crime scene. My keys are still dangling from my hand when the realization slams into me I'm not alone. Through the doorway to my living room, I see movement. A tape measure snaps shut. My brother Brian is standing in the hall, his son tugging at his sleeve. And there, on my couch, rearranging throw pillows she didn't buy, is my mother. This is my home. The townhouse I scraped and saved for. The address I never gave them. And yet, here they are, measuring, shifting, planning, as if my walls were already theirs. Madison, Mom says, startled for only a second before her voice smooths back into entitlement. You're home early. Home early. My voice comes out thin, hollow. How did you even get in here? She waves a hand, almost bored. Oh, I had a key made yesterday. Stopped by to congratulate you. The words slide through me like ice water. A key made, without asking. My mind flashes back to last week, when she'd asked to use the bathroom, her purse left behind on the counter. At the time I hadn't thought much of it. Now I do. I step over the spreading sauce, shoes sticking to the floor, anger rising with every breath. You took my keys and copied them. Brian fidgets, eyes on the spare bedroom. It's perfect for the kids, he mutters. Plenty of space. And suddenly, the truth crashes in with brutal clarity. This isn't an accident. This isn't a misunderstanding. This is a takeover. Planned, deliberate, and already in motion. For 32 years, I've been the afterthought. The sister who gave. The daughter who compromised. The one who was told, family comes first, even when it meant I came last. But standing in the doorway of the house I fought to claim, something inside me shifts. The trembling in my hands stills. My voice, when it comes, is steady, cold, and sharper than the broken glass at my feet. This is my home, I say, not yours, not ours, mine. I stood frozen, my chest pounding so hard it felt like it might explode. The red streaks spreading across the tile floor looked as if my entire childhood had been spilled out in front of me. Laid bare, undeniable, and painful. A childhood I thought I'd buried long ago, but it all came rushing back the moment I realized a copied key had opened my door. Memories flashed like a film reel. I remembered my 10th birthday, a small grocery store cake, a few crooked candles, and a rushed happy birthday from my mom before she hurried off to prepare Brian's big celebration. Just a week later, our backyard turned into a carnival. Balloons, a clown, music blaring, the whole neighborhood invited, and me. I had spent my birthday night quietly with a store, bought cake on the kitchen table. By the time I hit college, the favoritism was impossible to ignore. My parents covered all of Brian's tuition and even bought him a car to make things easier. Me, I juggled 3 part-time jobs, scrambling to pay every bill, every tuition check. Whenever I dared to speak up, the answer was always the same. You're the strong one, Madison. You'll figure it out. Brian needs us more. And now, decades later, here I was in my own home, watching my mother and brother recycle the same old script. I would sacrifice, I would give up. I would carry the weight. To them, it wasn't a question. It was a given. Mom looked up, irritation flickering across her face, when she realized I wasn't moving. Madison, don't be so dramatic. You live here alone. This place is too big for just you. Brian just got divorced, the kids need proper bedrooms. As his sister, you should understand. I heard every word, but strangely, a calmness settled over me. My hands stopped shaking. I didn't feel small anymore. Since when? I said slowly. Did Brian's life become my responsibility? Since when did the house I worked for, sweat, money, every ounce of effort, become the solution for everyone else? Brian frowned, trying to sound reasonable. You don't get it. This is good for all of us. You're one person. I've got 2 kids. Sharing a little space shouldn't be a big deal. Sharing, I almost laughed, for my entire life. Sharing had always meant I lost something, and they gained. I locked eyes with Mom. If this is what you call caring, then you've never truly cared for me at all. You've only ever treated me like Brian's shadow. I've had enough. The room fell into a heavy silence. I could hear the hallway clock ticking in the distance. Then Mom smirked, her smile sharpened with calculation. You can't cut yourself off forever. What will people say, Madison? When they find out you abandoned your own family. I drew in a deep breath, letting it fill my lungs. For the first time, I didn't care what people would say. I cared what I wanted, and in that moment, with the smell of marinara still thick in the air, I knew this wasn't about a key, or a house, or a spare bedroom. This was about breaking the cycle they'd chained me to for 32 years. I clenched my fists, my voice steady, sharp, unshaken. You have exactly 2 minutes to leave this house, before I call the police. I hadn't even picked up the shards of glass or wiped the thick streak of marinara off the floor when my eyes froze on the living room. A tape measure snapped open with a sharp click. My brother Brian was marking out the corners of the downstairs guest room, the room I had planned to turn into my home office. His oldest son stood beside him, clutching one of my throw pillows as if this house had belonged to him all along. And there was my mother, Linda, bent over, rearranging my armchair, nudging the sofa into a new angle. She moved with the ease of someone fixing up her own living room, not the townhouse I had just bought with years of hard-earned savings. I went rigid. For a moment it felt like the walls were closing in on me, squeezing the breath right out of my lungs. What are you doing here? The words scraped out of me, hoarse, almost unrecognizable. Linda looked up, not the least bit guilty. The only surprise on her face was that I'd come home early. Madison, we thought you'd be at work until late. Your brother and I just wanted to take a look around. You know how it is. Family helps family. I blinked. Family helps family. The phrase hit me like a hammer to the chest. For as long as I could remember, those words had been the excuse for everything I was forced to shoulder: tuition, bills, obligations that were never mine. And now they were using it again to justify walking into my house, rearranging my furniture, as if I were just a side character in my own life. I stepped closer, my shoes sticking slightly to the wet tile. Who gave you a key? Linda's tone was light, dismissive. Oh, last week when I visited. I borrowed your key to use the bathroom. I just made a copy while I had it. No need to overreact, honey. My ears rang. A copy. They had a key to my house, and who knew how many more. My blood felt like it was vibrating, ready to burst. No need to overact. I repeated, anger lacing every syllable. This is my house. I never gave anyone permission to copy my key. And you just went and did it anyway. Brian stepped forward, tape measure still in hand, his face tightening with irritation. Come on, Madison. Don't make this a big deal. This house has 3 bedrooms. You live here alone. Meanwhile, I've got 2 kids crammed into a tiny rental. Doesn't it make sense? I turned to him, my eyes like ice. The only thing that makes sense here is that your life is your responsibility. Not mine, and not this house. Silence dropped heavy over the room. The only sound was the hallway clock ticking, each second a drumbeat in the standoff. My mother and brother both stared at me, not with shame, but with disbelief, as if it had never once crossed their minds that I might stand up to them. And in that silence, something became terrifyingly clear. This wasn't some innocent mistake. This was a plan, a calculation made long before today, and I had let them push me too far, for far too long. The moment I saw Mom and Brian standing so casually inside my house, it was like a film reel snapped loose in my head, spilling memory after memory I had tried so hard to bury. Things I'd forced myself to forget came rushing back, sharp and painful as ever. I remembered my 11th birthday as if it were yesterday. Brian had a full-blown backyard party, balloons, a multi-tiered cake, the whole class invited. Meanwhile, my birthday was nothing more than a small store-bought cake on the kitchen counter. Mom set it down, lit a few crooked candles, and said, "Blow them out, honey. I need to get back outside to Brian's party." I sat there watching the flames flicker in the breeze from an old fan, listening to the music and laughter spilling in from the yard. Even then, I understood in my parents' eyes, Brian's happiness mattered more than mine ever would. High school wasn't much different. Brian was the star athlete, and my parents bragged about him to every neighbor. When I won a scholarship, the only response I got was, "That's good. but your brother is really the family's hope. I learned to step back, to swallow my feelings, to keep quiet so no one would be disappointed. By the time college came around, the favoritism cut deeper than ever. My parents paid all of Brian's tuition and even bought him a car to get around more easily. Me, I worked 3 part-time jobs, lived off scholarships and student loans, folding clothes late at night with tears stinging my eyes, wondering why their love came with a price tag and why I was never worth paying it. I'll never forget the last time I tried to bring it up. I'd just found out they gave Brian money for the down payment on his first condo. I asked Mom, "What about me? Don't I deserve a stable place to live?" She just smirked and said, "Madison, you're stronger. You'll figure it out. Family has to focus on the one who needs it more." Those words shackled me for years, an invisible rope binding me to sacrifice, to carry the burden, to always step aside. And now, standing in the small townhouse I'd nearly broken myself to afford, I realized that rope was still there. Family helps family. Dragged out again, twisted into a weapon to turn my sacrifice into obligation, they're taking into something reasonable. I looked at Mom adjusting my curtains, at Brian measuring the room as if it already belonged to his kids. My chest tightened. Part of me wanted to scream, to ask, "Have you ever, even once, thought about me?" But another part of me whispered, "Don't ask. You already know the answer." I drew in a long breath. The memories no longer made me feel weak. If anything, they lit a fire in my chest. For years, I had let them define my worth, relegate me to the shadows of my own life. No more. It ends here. The air inside my house grew so heavy it was hard to breathe. The ticking of the wall clock echoed sharp and loud, like a countdown to something inevitable. Mom was still rifling through a small cabinet, her fingers brushing across the picture frames I just set on the shelf. Brian kept fiddling with his tape measure, lips pressed tight as if calculating where the kids' bunk beds would go. I couldn't take it anymore. For years I'd stayed silent, compliant, sacrificing. But not here, not in this house, not anymore. I stepped into the living room, my voice ringing out, steady, firm, "Stop." Right now, both of them froze, as if the thought of me raising my voice had never once crossed their minds. Linda frowned, trying to keep her composure. "Madison, what's wrong with you?" I was just rearranging a few things to make it more practical. "And Brian, I don't care." I cut her off. "This is my house. Nobody touches anything here without my permission. Nobody but me." Brian looked up, his expression sour. "You're overreacting. I just wanted to make sure this room's big enough for the kids. You've got 3 bedrooms, Madison, and you live here alone. Doesn't it make sense?" I stared straight at him, letting the fury and hurt burn through my words. "The only thing that makes sense is you taking responsibility for your own life and your kids. Not me, and not this house." For a moment, Brian faltered, the tape measure slipping in his hand. But Linda stepped forward, her eyes flashing with that old familiar reproach. "You really are stubborn, Madison. Your family is struggling. Brian needs you. The kids need a proper home. How can you be so heartless?" That old wave of guilt rose up, the guilt I'd been trained to carry for 32 years. But this time, I refused to let it drown me. I drew in a breath, then shook my head slowly. "I'm not heartless. I'm protecting what's mine. I worked myself raw for this house, paid for it with blood, sweat, and sleepless nights. No one has the right to turn it into ours, just because my brother failed, or because my mother hides behind family helps family." I stepped forward, planting myself in the center of the room. My voice turned cold, sharp, startling even me. "This is my house, not Brian's, not Mom's, not anyone else's, mine." Linda froze, her lips parting but no words coming out. Brian stumbled back, the tape measure clattering to the floor. I bent down, snatched the spare key from Brian's hand. He hesitated, but let it go when he saw the look in my eyes. I closed my fist around it, the metal digging into my palm, like reclaiming a piece of my soul that had been stolen too long. "You have 2 minutes to get out of my house," I said, my voice firm, unshaken. "Or I'm calling the police." No one spoke. Only the steady tick of the clock filled the silence, punctuating a decision that could no longer be undone. The door slammed shut behind them with a heavy thud. I stood there, clutching the spare key so tight my knuckles whitened, my chest heaving like I'd just run a marathon. For a fleeting moment, silence filled the house, and with it came a strange relief. I had finally said the words I should have spoken years ago. I had claimed the right to own my life, but that peace didn't last an hour. My phone buzzed violently. On the screen, Dad. I hesitated, then answered. What the hell do you think you just did? Madison. His voice was low and furious, the kind that made my temples pound. Your mother's in tears. Do you have any idea you've just torn this family apart? All because you're selfish. I gripped the phone tighter, trying to stay calm. Part of me wanted to explain, to make him understand. But I knew better. Any explanation would only become fuel for more accusations. So I said nothing. His voice rose, sharp as a whip. Your brother needs help. His kids need a home. And you're his sister. You're a daughter. It's your responsibility to this family. Or are you planning to sit alone in that big house and just let them suffer? I bit down on my lip. Those words had chained me for decades, convincing me that love meant erasing myself, sacrificing until there was nothing left. But this time, through his shouting, I heard something new. A truth I could no longer ignore to them. I would never be enough. I don't want to argue, Dad. I whispered, then hung up. But the storm had only just begun. The next morning, I unlocked my phone to a Facebook notification. The post was from Mom, Linda herself. A photo of Brian's 3 kids squeezed onto a lumpy old bed, their faces arranged in pitiful frowns. The caption read, "These children deserve better. Family means sharing. Family first." The words stabbed me straight through the chest. And beneath the post, the comments poured in. Poor kids. Children are the future. Who could be selfish enough to keep a house to themselves? Hopefully Madison comes to her senses. My name, dragged out, publicly shamed. Not once did anyone ask for my side of the story. Not once did anyone wonder if there was more to it. Suddenly, I wasn't just the villain in my family. I was the villain in my entire community. By noon, my phone was buzzing nonstop with texts from relatives, old neighbors, family friends. Is it true, Madison? You'd let Brian and the kids be homeless. Your mother's heartbroken. Don't disappoint her again. I sat in my armchair, hands trembling with rage and helplessness. They hadn't just violated my house. Now they were violating my name, my dignity, the very image of who I was. In that suffocating silence, it hit me this fight wasn't going to end just because I said no. They would escalate. They would keep piling on pressure. They would do everything in their power to break me down. And if I stayed silent, I would slip back into the role I had always played, Madison. The daughter who yields, the sister who sacrifices, the one who always comes last. I closed my eyes and drew a long, steady breath. Not this time. I swore to myself. Never again. The text came Thursday afternoon, short and cold. Dinner at 7 tomorrow. We need to talk. Mom's making pot roast, your favorite. Dad. I stared at the screen. Part of me wanted to delete it, pretend I never saw it. But another part whispered, maybe they've reconsidered. Maybe they actually want to make peace. Friday evening, I drove to my parents' old house, my chest tightening with every mile. At the door, the faint smell of pot roast drifted out, a scent that once meant safety, back when I still believed family dinners were a refuge. The dining room glowed under warm yellow light. The table was set with polished silverware. But what stopped me cold was the seating. Dad, Mom, and Brian all sat together on one side, a solid wall of unity. Across from them, a single empty chair, waiting for me. The divide couldn't have been clearer if they'd drawn a line down the table. Madison. Mom said with a tight smile, "We're so glad you could join us." I pulled out the chair, forcing myself to stay calm. Before I could even touch my spoon, Dad slid a thick yellow envelope across the table. "This is the best solution," he said. My hands trembled slightly as I opened it. Inside were printouts of real estate listings, 5-bedroom houses, big backyards, all within minutes of Brian's kids' school. Notes were scribbled across the pages. Perfect playroom. Safe yard for the kids. Spacious kitchen for the whole family. Mom leaned in, her voice soft but cutting. "We've already spoken with the bank. Switching your mortgage isn't complicated. If everyone contributes, it'll be manageable. My stomach dropped. You contacted my bank. Just preliminary talks. Mom waved it off like it was nothing. No need to overreact. Brian chimed in, steady, almost smug. You don't have that much furniture anyway. We can sell some of it to make space for the kids' bunk beds. My truck can handle the move in one trip. I looked at the three of them. So familiar, yet suddenly strangers. Not once had they asked me what I wanted. Not once. They'd already decided. My only role was to nod along. You're dividing up my life as if I don't exist, I said, each word carved from ice. Dad tapped the table, his eyes stern. Madison, you're acting like a child. This is family. Refusing only proves you don't care about your own blood. Mom reached across the table, her hand hovering over mine but cold as stone. Think about your nieces and nephew, sweetheart. Children remember who showed up for them. The air thickened, every word like a rope tightening around my throat. I straightened, set my spoon down, folded my napkin carefully. Then I met their eyes and whispered, clear enough for everyone to hear, watch me, not help. Silence detonated in the room, so heavy I could hear my own heartbeat. Brian's jaw dropped. Dad's face flushed crimson. Mom recoiled as if I'd struck her. I pushed my chair back, stood tall, and walked out, leaving the untouched pot roast behind me. I left that dinner with my hand still trembling, but my mind sharper than it had ever been. The words, watch me not help, kept echoing in my head like a vow. I thought maybe that night would end it, that they'd finally back off. I was wrong. 3 days later, just as I sat down at my desk at work, a coworker walked over, holding out her phone. Madison, is this your brother's family? I just saw this on Facebook. On the screen was a photo, Brian's 3 kids crammed together on a worn-out sofa, frowning for the camera. The caption read, when family turns their back, the children suffer. Help us find them a real home. Family first. My stomach twisted. Beneath the post were dozens of comments. Oh, those poor kids. That sister must be selfish. No one abandons their own nieces and nephews. And then the link, a GoFundMe title. Housing crisis. Help my kids have a home. The profile photo was my townhouse. My house. The one I had bled for, worked years to afford. I nearly dropped the phone. They had turned me into the villain, painting themselves as the victims. That evening, the doorbell rang. Through the peephole I saw Pastor Williams, the man who had known me since childhood, standing with a Bible in his hand. His expression was heavy with disappointment. Madison, he said softly when I cracked the door open. Your mother came to me. She's worried. She says you've closed your heart to your family. You know, the Lord calls us to love and to sacrifice. My chest pounded. I bit my lip. I didn't ask for counsel, Pastor. I just want peace in my own home. He sighed, eyes full of pity. I'll pray for your heart to soften. I shut the door. The tears came instantly, not from regret but from the crushing loneliness. They weren't just invading my home anymore. Now they were dragging the entire community into their war. 2 days later, a letter arrived from the HOA, a formal complaint that I was running an illegal business from home, a blatant lie. I had to file paperwork proving I only worked remotely, no business at my address. For the first time in my life, my private existence was being dissected and weaponized to corner me. That night, I sat at my kitchen table surrounded by bank statements, HOA letters, angry texts from relatives, Facebook posts tearing me apart, and it hit me with cold clarity, if I didn't fight back, I'd lose everything. My house, my name, even myself. So I started fighting. I changed every password, installed new security cameras on every door and window, documented everything, texts, posts, complaints, even recorded phone calls full of shouting and guilt. Each piece of evidence slipped neatly into a growing file folder. And as the folder thickened, I noticed something. My hands no longer shook, my heart still ached, but my grip was steady. For the first time, I wasn't just defending myself. I was taking control, my house, my life, and I would never let anyone take them from me again. The text came on a Saturday afternoon, short and blunt, family dinner Sunday in Texas. Everyone expects you there. We need to resolve this house situation. The house situation. I let out a bitter laugh. They made it sound so small. Just a little dispute that could be patched up over a nice meal. But I knew better. This wasn't a family dinner. It was a trial. A staged tribunal where every relative would gather to pressure me into surrender. That evening, I drove down clutching the thick folder I'd spent weeks putting together. My grandmother's house glowed with lights, the driveway jammed with cars. My heart hammered, but my grip on the file never loosened. When I stepped into the living room, the chatter died instantly. All eyes turned to me. Brian sat flanked by my parents on the sofa, his face set in a mask of quiet suffering. Around them were aunts, uncles, cousins. Even Grandma, her silver hair catching the light, sat at the head of the room, her expression heavy with judgment. Dad stood, forcing a smile. "Madison, we've talked this through. Now it's time you listen to reason." I sat down opposite them, silent. I laid the folder on the table. Mom cleared her throat, slipping into her role. "Sweetheart, family is the foundation. We can't let Brian and the kids stay cramped while you've got more space than you need. This is your chance to show love." An aunt nodded. An uncle added, "Think of the children's future, Madison. Sharing a little space won't hurt you." The murmurs spread through the room. The script was familiar: Madison protests, family pressures, Madison caves. I drew in a deep breath. Then slowly, I opened the folder and pulled out the first sheet. "If this is a trial, then let's bring evidence." I handed my grandmother the first packet. "This is every rent check I paid while living at home during college." Meanwhile, Brian's tuition was fully covered, and he had his own apartment. The room stirred uneasily. My aunt frowned as she flipped through the next document. Side-by-side birthday expenses, thousands spent on Brian's parties versus the cheap grocery store cakes I got. Then I opened my laptop. The video lit up the room. Mom and Brian on my porch, fumbling with 3 different keys at my door. The footage flickered across their faces. The silence was deafening. This is what family help looks like. My voice was calm but carried through the room. Copying my keys, breaking into my house, calling my bank, launching a fake GoFundMe. Is this your version of love? Grandma covered her mouth. A few cousins stared down at their shoes. Dad shot to his feet, his voice booming. "You're slandering your own family!" I didn't even flinch. "No, I'm showing the truth." "Dad, Mom, Brian, you built a lie to paint me as selfish, as cruel. But the truth is right here, in these documents, in these recordings. And tonight, I'm done staying silent." The words rang out like a gavel striking wood. For the first time, I saw my relatives' eyes shift. They weren't looking at me like the problem anymore. They were seeing the cracks in the story my parents had spun for years. I closed the folder, stood tall. This is my life, and I will live it on my terms. None of you have the right to decide that for me. Then I turned and walked out, leaving behind a silence so heavy it no longer belonged to me, but to those who'd just been exposed. When my grandmother's door closed behind me, I knew the confrontation was over. But what lingered wasn't triumph, it was emptiness. I had turned the truth inside out, exposed years of favoritism and neglect. Yet I also knew something else. Whatever bond I had with my family had shattered beyond repair. That night, I sat alone in my townhouse. The thick folder still lay on the table, beside my laptop's glowing screen. I opened my email and reread a message I'd skimmed past weeks earlier. "Denver branch seeking new manager. We believe you'd be a great fit. Please respond within 2 weeks if interested." 2 weeks? My eyes drifted around the house. The freshly painted walls, the furniture I'd chosen piece by piece. This was the home I had dreamed of for years, the place I thought would finally be mine. But now, after everything, it felt like a battlefield, each corner scarred with memories of conflict. I whispered to myself, maybe it's time to start over. Somewhere I can finally be free. The next day, I called a real estate agent. Within a week, there was an offer, higher than I'd ever imagined. I signed the contract with trembling hands, not from regret, but from release. I wasn't running away. I was opening a new door. The messages from my family kept coming. Dad snarled over the phone. "You're betraying your blood?" Mom sobbed. "You'll regret turning your back on us?" Brian's text was cold Z. "You'll never be happy." I didn't respond. Instead, I saved every message. proof of a chapter I was finally closing. On moving day, I packed every box myself. No one from my family showed, but strangely, I felt lighter. Friends and coworkers dropped by with hot coffee and words of encouragement. They helped me lift boxes, seal cartons with tape, and in that moment, I realized something profound: family isn't always blood. Sometimes, family is the people who stand with you when no one else will. The road to Denver stretched long and quiet. I drove past snow-dusted mountains, across wide, open fields. With every mile, my chest felt lighter. When the highway sign finally read, "Welcome to Colorado," a smile broke across my face, a smile I hadn't worn in years. On my first morning in the new apartment, sunlight streamed through tall windows, flooding the empty room. I set down my suitcase and stood in the center, surrounded by absolute peace. No sudden knocks, no one barging in. Just me and the silence of freedom. I opened my laptop and typed my reply. I accept. See you in Denver next week. My fingers shook as I hit send, but my heartbeat soared. For the first time in my life, I felt it deep in my bones. This was my decision, my life, and I would live it, without asking anyone's permission. A year passed faster than I ever imagined. Denver, the city I once only knew from postcards, has become my true home. On a spring morning, sunlight pours through the wide windows of my new apartment, casting golden stripes across the polished wooden floor. I sit at my small kitchen table, sipping hot coffee, staring out at the Rockies still capped with snow. It's hard to believe that just 12 months ago, I was drowning in accusations, weighed down by the judgment of my own blood. Now, life is simple, peaceful. At the new branch, work is demanding, but my colleagues respect me. No more worrying about family phone calls and venting, emergencies. No more flinching at a knock on the door, bracing to see my mother, or Brian demanding something that was never theirs. Instead, I've found new people around me. Elaine, my coworker, brings me toast some mornings and drags me hiking on weekends. Jared, a young engineer who used to shrink under criticism, now speaks with confidence, partly because I stood up for his ideas in a meeting. And then there's Sophia, my downstairs neighbor, who often knocks just to hand me fresh herbs from her balcony garden. Slowly, I've come to understand, family doesn't always mean blood. Family can be the ones who sit with you after work, listening when you've had a long day. Family can be someone who remembers you prefer apple pie over chocolate cake. Family can be friends crowded into your tiny kitchen, singing happy birthday around a lopsided pie, filling the air with laughter. In my apartment, the walls now hold snapshots of these moments: me, at the summit of a mountain, wind whipping my hair as I grin into the cold, me and Elaine in a cozy cafe, me and a circle of friends raising glasses on New Year's Eve. Each photo is proof that I've built a family, not inherited, but chosen. Of course, there are nights when memories return. I still remember the accusations, the cutting looks. I sometimes wonder if I was too harsh in walking away. But then I think, if I hadn't left, would I be sitting here now? Would I know this peace, this freedom? One afternoon, while sorting through my bookshelf, I found an old family portrait, the one I'd once set face down. I studied it: Dad, Mom, Brian, all beaming, while I sat off to the side with that strained, uneasy smile. I slipped the photo out and replaced it with a picture from a mountain picnic. Me with my new circle of friends, laughing in the sun. I hung it by the front door, so every time I walk in, I see the difference from the family I was born into to the family I chose. That night, as I sat in my apartment, listening to the wind slide through the cracks, it struck me healing isn't about forgetting the past. It's about building a present strong enough to hold you steady. I chose right. I chose myself. One autumn morning, I sat by the window watching the leaves in Denver blaze red and gold. The coffee in my hands steamed gently, filling my small kitchen with warmth. In that quiet moment, I realized my life had truly entered a new chapter. I no longer woke up wondering, what will they try to take from me today? I no longer jumped at the sound of the doorbell. And most importantly, I no longer felt I had to prove my worth to people who had never truly seen it. This past year has taught me more than the 32 years before it. I've learned that boundaries are not selfish. Boundaries are a form of love, loving yourself enough not to let anyone harm you, and loving others enough not to feed relationships built on control and coercion. So many times I've wished I could whisper to my 16-year-old self that not having a grand birthday party didn't make me any less worthy, that I could lean down to the 20-year-old girl juggling 3 jobs and tell her she deserved support, not dismissal. But now I understand, those years gave me lessons I can pass on to anyone listening today. If you are living in a story like mine, overlooked, used, pressured to sacrifice while your own needs and dreams are pushed aside, remember this: you have the right to say no. That right does not make you the villain. It does not make you ungrateful. It does not make you cold. It proves that you know who you are and that you deserve respect. Yes, when you stand up, the ground will shake. People who were used to your silence will be stunned by your refusal. They may call you selfish, ungrateful, heartless. But believe me, the truth isn't in their words. The truth is in how it feels to finally sleep through the night without fear of intrusion. The truth is in the joy of arranging your home, your work, and your life by your own design. I've learned that blood does not always equal love. Sometimes love comes from those who share no blood with you, but who choose you, stand beside you, respect you. That is real family. And if I could leave you with one message, it would be this: be brave enough to choose yourself. Because when you protect yourself, you're not only saving your present, you're opening the door to a future where you can love and be loved in a healthier way. As I looked out the window, golden light spilling over the mountains, gratitude filled my chest. Not gratitude for the pain or the loss, but for the journey that carried me here. To a life that is mine, and mine alone,